Amen. Amen. As long as we keep our head to the sky, be optimistic. If that's not a word about hope, I don't know what is. In these perilous times, we have to keep our head to the sky. Good morning, church. This week we are beginning our series, Notes from Octavia Estelle Butler. How many of you know who that is? All right, good. If you don't, we're going to catch you up in the next couple of weeks of this sermon series. Octavia E. Butler, a novelist, an essayist, an extraordinary thinker, a prophet, some call her, as she was always dealing with the future-oriented things. But the thing about Octavia is that she never gave up hope. She never gave up hope. Many people have said that her writings are depressing. Oh my God, she's always talking about something that sounds like the end of the world. But I recall an essay that she wrote for Essence magazine in the year 2000. Octavia was describing an interaction she had with a young man when she was giving a lecture. She was giving a lecture about her work, and many people brought up the fact that so much of her work dealt with the problems of this world. They dealt with the problems of this world, and she said to the room, I didn't make up the problems. I didn't make them up. All I did was look around at the problems we're neglecting now and give them about 30 years to grow into full-fledged disasters. Now, she said this, and a young man decides to ask a question. He said, well, Miss Octavia, what are the answers to the problems? And Octavia Butler said, there isn't an answer. And he said, so does that mean we're all doomed? Look how easily he slipped into nihilism. Does that mean that we're all doomed? You said there's no answer. And she said, that's not what I mean. I mean that there isn't one answer, but that there are actually 1,000 answers at least, and you can be one of them. You can be one of them. Well, that's a cute ending of the story, but that's not how it ends, because then the young man goes on to publish an article where he puts her name in headlines, and he says, Octavia Butler says there isn't an answer. And she got upset because she said, that's not what I said. I said that there isn't one answer, but that there are actually many answers. She despised being misunderstood. She despised being misunderstood because she did not want people to think that she was a hopeless person. And she says in this essay, she says, one thing I and my main characters never do when contemplating the future is give up hope. In fact, the very act of trying to look ahead and to discern possibilities and offer warnings is in and of itself an act of hope. And so this morning, I invite you to meet me in the Revelation to John. For those of you who ain't never read that book, it's the last one. Amen, it's the last one. All right, flip to the last book of the Bible or scroll to the last book of the Bible. The Revelation to John, not Revelations. It's only one revelation, no S. The Revelation to John of Patmos in the 8th chapter, starting with verse 6. I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version. And it reads, now, the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets made ready to blow them. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and they were hurled to the earth. And a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea became blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star was Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many died from the water because it was made poisonous. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light was darkened. A third of the day was kept from shining, and likewise the night. Then I looked up. I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew amid heaven. Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth at the blast of the other trumpet that the three angels are about to blow. The word of John for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Lauren Olamina is a seer. The 15-year-old protagonist in Octavia Butler's seminal novel, The Parable of the Sower, is a seer. A seer, a person who is supposed to be able to, through supernatural insight, see what the future holds. Lauren is a seer. Seers are prophetic, but being prophetic is not just about predicting prosperity and victory out of thin air. Typically associated with prophetic abilities, seers have been known to be able to access unseen truths. Seers are truth tellers. They are telling the truth, telling what already is and what can be, telling the truth about the state of this world, about the stuff that matters, and the stuff that matters doesn't always feel good, y'all. It doesn't always sound good. It does not, nor should it make you shout with joy all the time and dance. The prophets and the seers in the biblical canon demonstrate this for us. Before they get to their predictions of glory, they are predicting war and destruction. Deborah in Judges 4, she foresees war in the midst of Israel's disobedience. Isaiah in chapter 6 foresees the destruction and the devastation of the city. Jesus in Mark chapter 13 warns of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and the pending persecution his followers will face. Being a seer, being prophetic, means the rendering of bad news before you get to the good news. I know the church folk don't want to hear this. That's why it's quiet. Because we have been taught and conditioned to believe that the prophetic nature of this faith thing is all about the good news. But if we look back into our Hebrew Bible and into our New Testament, the bad news always comes before the good news. This is why I find it interesting that so many self-proclaimed prophets around make a lot of prosperity promises, painting rose-colored pictures about what's coming in people's individual lives. God told me to tell you that you are going to have a new car this year. God told me to tell you that you're about to get a big house this year. God told me to tell you that you're going to get a raise. I find it interesting that God told them to tell us all these things except Project 2025. I find it interesting that God told them to tell us all of these dreams and aspiration, rainbows and lollipops, but God did not tell them that the eviction notice was coming. What happened when I had to go on food stamps? Why did not God tell you that I was going to have to go on food stamps? There's something awry in the prophetic world, but I digress. This is not only a simplistic assessment of the seer's role in the community, it is actually antithetical to the purpose of the seer. For one, the seer is not a magician. I know we like magic. We want to show up, somebody goes poof, and all of our problems are gone. The seer is not a magician too. The seer is almost always speaking to a community and not to an individual person. Perhaps because the seeker understands that maybe victory is not mine, but it is ours, and that salvation is communal. The seer sometimes informs us that death is coming, that ecological disaster is coming, that things are going to get much worse before they get better. And Lauren Olamina understands this. She is a seer, but she is living in and among a community that does not see what she sees. And when she tries to make them see what she sees, they do not like it. People don't like seers. This is why I say people often run from seers. This is why when I hear stories of people flocking to an arena to see a prophet, I think that can't be true because people don't actually like the prophets. They don't like what the prophets have to say about what's going on in the world. Everybody thinks the seer is crazy. They think the seer is taunting them. They don't want to hear what the seer has to say. And I believe nobody actually wants this job. People are gifted with it, but nobody is actually building a platform, making flyers to post on social media about their seeing capabilities. It is undesirable. You are the whistleblower, and as we know, whistleblowers end up dead. Nobody likes the seer. Lauren is a seer, and people don't like her, and they don't like seers because seers make us look in the mirror and see how we have become complacent with the conditions of our living together. We meet Lauren, ironically, in July of the year 2024. Now, this book was published in 93, but the book takes off in July 2024. We meet her, and throughout the course of her journaling, Lauren dictates to us all that is happening in and around her. She is not seeing some distant future of devastation and despair. She is seeing current devastation and current despair right in front of her, and she is trying to warn others that if they don't prepare themselves for what is coming, they will not survive. Lauren is a seer. What does she see? She sees that her neighborhood is surrounded by walls put up by the HOA. I mean, they didn't have to add like that. The neighborhood is surrounded by walls, and the walls are more threatening than they are protective. Have you ever been coaxed into believing that all of these security measures are for our benefit, but it's actually more of a threat, more of a hazard than it is about protection? It's like the cameras that they are putting up around DC that are finding people for loitering for too long and for standing in one spot too long and for wearing masks in the middle of a pandemic. These things that have been sold to us as protective are actually killing us. They are threatening us. She sees that the city lights have faded. Why? Because electricity is too expensive, and people can't afford to keep their lights on 24 hours a day. I noticed a few of us who grew up in a house where the mama said, turn them lights off. You ain't in that room right now. Turn those lights off. She sees that the lights have faded. What else does she see? She sees that her community is having to ration water because they can't afford the rising cost of this natural, God-given resource. In the opening section of the book, they are getting ready to do a baptism, and they don't have enough clean water to do the baptism. She sees the dire straits of her people. What else does she see? I want you to be making the connections here. She sees that nobody in her community goes to school anymore or anywhere anymore. Why? Maybe because they are afraid of getting shut up at the schoolhouse, at the church house, at the movie theater, at the grocery store. Nobody leaves the walls unless they have to. One might get ticketed for loitering, or worse, one might get arrested for sleeping outside on the sidewalk. She sees that the hurricane season is coming sooner. She sees that the leaders of government agencies no longer have to be experts in their fields. She sees that there is a man running for president who is promising to return the nation to the glory, wealth, and order of yesterday. yesteryear, to make America great again, if you will, while setting the country 100 years back. Lauren is a seer. She is a seer. And for the most part, many of her people are too scared to dream beyond the systems that they have been given. What she's seeing is not the future. She is contending with the present. And like Lauren, the author of Revelation, is finding himself having to contend with the ways of this wicked world. We meet John, the seer, the author of the book that so many of us in this room were taught to be scared of, the Revelation. After being banished to the Greek island of Patmos. Patmos was where the prison was. John is writing from prison. John and his people have been tormented by the Roman Empire. He and other followers of Jesus are literally witnessing their world crumble. The Romans just finished destroying in the previous century their temple in Jerusalem. And John, a troublemaker of sorts, is literally in prison when the voice of God tells him, write on a scroll what you see. Write on a scroll what you see and send it to the 7 churches: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. God says, write what you see. Not write the future. So many of us have been taught by people who have told us that Revelation was predicting some far off future where God will judge the world. God told John of Patmos to write what you are seeing now. Write what you see. The perils of empire have flattened their forest. The perils of empire have leveled their worship place. And now the hazards of empire and imperial rule are causing injury to humans, animals, and the earth alike. John writes, the earth is burning up. Hawaii, California. The waterways have been contaminated and the water is undrinkable. Flint, Michigan. Jackson, Mississippi. Eastern North Carolina. John might be embellishing a little bit for the sake of selling his story, but what he is doing is merely telling the truth. Telling the truth about what he is seeing and warning the 7 church communities about what is bound to happen, not to scare them, to prepare them. Not to scare them, to prepare them. Now that is odd for some of us who grew up perhaps in Christian fundamentalist communities. Fundamentalists have dominated the interpretation of the book of Revelation. They have made the book about fear so that they can control people. If we can scare them, we can get them to do what they want. But I'd argue that John of Patmos and Jesus and Isaiah and Deborah and even Lauren do not come to control but to set free. If I could just burst open your imagination, if I could just break the chains off of your mind, you know, the first tactic of the empire is to enchain the mind, control the mind. If I could just set your mind free, your imagination free, they did not come to scare, they came to prepare. If I could just get the people to see what I see, if I could just, I don't know how many of you in here have been the seer in your family. You've been the seer in your community. If you could just get the people to see what you see, the way you see it, then you could free them from their isms and their phobias. The seers, nobody likes them. They're not fun. John, the seer, accuses many of the churches of buying into the cheap, performative promises of the empire. And of being lukewarm, wishy-washy, as some of you say, and being unprepared to create the future that they want to see. This book is an apocalypse. An apocalypse does not mean the end of the world. Apocalypses means the unveiling. This book is the unveiling of the terrors of what happens when we let the empire run off with our possibilities. It is an uncovering. It is a revealing. And John is trying to imagine a new heaven and a new earth in the midst of this turmoil. I'd say that our friend from Parable of the Sower, Lauren, is trying to do the same thing. Because one thing Octavia Butler and her characters never do is give up hope. Lauren, like John, is trying to imagine a new heaven and a new earth. She is trying to lean into the gift of imaginative possibilities, and Lauren has a hope, and we get to see it in this beautiful interaction between her and her friend Joanna. She is sitting down one day with her friend Joanna, and she is talking to Joanna, and she is telling Joanna about all the things that are happening in their community, about the fact that cholera is spreading, about the fact that they don't have decent sanitation water, about the fact that tornadoes are hammering the Midwest. And Joanna says to her, "Why do you talk about all this stuff? This is depressing. Why do you talk about this? We can't do anything about it. The damage has been done." Joanna, like many, has slipped into a kind of hopelessness, or what we call nihilism or nihilism. She has slipped into a hopelessness, a despair. And I'm reminded of the quote that Baldwin said. He said, "I ain't got time for despair." He said, "I might be enraged, but I can't go and tell the children there is no hope." Joanna has slipped into despair, and Lauren is trying to get her to see what she sees. Joanna, if you could just get over the fear of the catastrophe, if you could just set yourself free from the fear of this earth crumbling, then maybe you can open up your mind to see new possibilities. Joanna ain't having it. Joanna isn't having it, and she goes back and forth with Lauren. They go back and forth in this kind of tug of war, and she says, "Why is this so important to you?" And Lauren says, "We have to get ready." People, get ready. You sing that loud. We have to get ready for what is about to come. We can't be scared, and we have to get past the fear. She starts to ask Joanna, "Joanna, are you ready?" And Joanna said, "For what?" She says, "Don't you have books in your house about soap making and gardening and planting our own food because they're going to pull away the resources that we're used to having?" She says, "Don't you have books in your house about fishing?" She says, "Joanna, you should be reading all of that to get yourself ready." And Joanna says, "No, I don't. Why does it matter? We can just end our lives right now. None of this is important." Joanna says to Lauren, "Why do you care so much?" And Lauren says, "Because I intend to survive." Lauren says, "I care because I intend to survive. I will read every book. I will learn how to plant my own food and grow my own food. I will learn how to hunt. I will learn how to fish. I will learn how to aim a rifle at because I intend to survive." Y'all not gonna take my possibility of life away from me. Like Lorraine Hansberry said, "I wish to live. I intend to survive." And I don't know who needs to hear this today, who came into this church after the news that aired last night, but if you got up this morning and you put on your clothes and you stepped out into the street and you came on the train all the way to Riverside, I'm assuming you came because you intend to survive. We don't have time for despair. We don't have time for despair. I don't care what happens on November 5th, who wins, we must intend to survive. Somebody woke up this morning with a heavy heart and with anxiety, perhaps with a broken spirit, but you clawed your way out of bed this morning to gather in community because you intend to survive. Maybe somebody is facing facing personal challenges, economic challenges, anxiety, and depression brought on by all that is happening in this world, but you are willing to exhaust possibilities because you intend to survive. Beloved, this is why I'm learning how to plant on my balcony like Reverend Carolyn told me to. I need to learn how to plant. Sarah knows I kill every plant in this church, but I'm going to learn how to garden and how to plant because I intend to survive. I was reading this book by a wonderful scholar called Alexis Pauline Gumbs, and it's called Undrowned: Lessons from Marine Mammals. And I posted it on Instagram, and a colleague, professor of mine, said, Mia, is it good? Is it any good? I said, I'm just on the first chapter. I don't know yet, but I'm going to read this anyway because I am willing to learn from marine mammals because I intend to survive. Lauren intends to survive, and she wants to take her people with her. She intends to survive, and she's having this back and forth with Joanna, not because she is trying to control Joanna, control what Joanna thinks, or control what Joanna feels, but because she wants Joanna to survive. She does not want Joanna and her father and the people to cede their power over to the principalities that aim to murder us. We must intend to survive, and if that's all you walk out of this church with today is an intention to survive, then we will begin this journey of justice and of liberation and of faith. Amen. And it's going to take us radically exercising our imaginations. It's going to take us radically exercising our imaginations and doing some things we have never done before. Nostalgia is dangerous, we discover. Nostalgia and this motif of people wanting to go back to normal, it's not coming back. We must move forward and do some things we have never done before if we intend to. And so I leave you with this today. I leave you with this because some of you woke up enraged this morning. You woke up angry. You spent all last night doom scrolling on social media, watching the clips, hearing the opinions. You might even be a little scared right now, and fear is okay, but my goal is for you to get over the fear so that we can face the future together with imaginative possibilities because our goal is survival. Amen. So will you join me in setting that intention today? Come on, rise and body or spirit. I want you to turn to your neighbor, and I want you to say, neighbor, I intend to survive. You can turn to the other one and say, neighbor, I intend to survive, that I am not going to give up or give in or give over my hope to any institution or person, regardless of their political affiliation, but that my intention of survival is greater than whatever happens in a couple of months. We must intend to survive for the sake of all that is holy and liberative. And the people of God say together, amen, and ashe.